This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Maloney, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. Welcome to the Heroic Voice. I'm here with Randy Reynaldo, the creator of Rob Haynes, the comic book Rob Haynes Adventures, which has been going on now for what, 30 years in some form or
Yeah.
another? Uh,
Yes.
yeah, 26 issues of Rob Haynes Adventures, like 4 issues of the earlier comic book, the name of which escapes me,
Adventure Strip Digest.
Adventure Strip Digest.
Right.
And
Very
then,
quickly, that was the name of it as a zine before that. That's why it had that name Digest in there because it was a zine before that.
okay, that's cool. So it's like sometime in the 80s when you actually started doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually early 90s. I started around 90 almost exactly.
Okay. Well, it's good to see you. Um,
Good to see you.
it's CAPS has been a long time since I went to a CAPS meeting, and
Sure.
sadly, CAPS has ceased to exist. So
Yes.
maybe we can figure something out.
Yeah.
So, um, for those who may not be familiar with it, Rob Haynes Adventures is in some ways not really a throwback. It's more like an homage to, the old classic Sunday adventure comic strips that appeared in newspapers back in the day. But you're doing it in a modern era, modern
Right.
take, but the same kind of style, I suppose.
Mhm.
Um, let's get into that a little bit, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Randy. Um, we share a love for the Sunday strip. I mean, I did a Flair Sunday strip that sadly Creators Syndicate was never able to sell. But we're going to be collecting those into a book format shortly.
Great.
Rob Haynes Adventures. Tell us about that.
Yes, first I want to say I'm glad you said that it's not really like a nostalgia book, but you're right. It was originally inspired by the great adventure strips of the 30s and 40s. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to do that kind of adventure strip, but set in the modern day, just continuing kind of where they went. But I do believe I've made it my own thing. It doesn't, like you said, it's not a nostalgia book. It doesn't go back, but what I like is that, I do it in black and white. I mean, that's partly for economic reasons, but I did love those old black and white strips. And I think an important part of it is that I try to connect it to the real world. It's just a backdrop setting of the stories, but real world events like what was happening in the Middle East, what was happening in Eastern Europe at the time. I mean, fortunately, I'm not too specific about that. So they don't really date my series that much. But as an example, like at the beginning, we were still in the Cold War. So my early stuff has him involved in the Cold War.
Of
But,
course.
yeah, but my strip, like a lot of those old strips, I mean, I never really, I don't put a lot of thought into it, but the character hasn't aged. And like I said, the beginning of the strip was the kind of the Cold War, but and a lot of recurring characters, and a lot of romance. But at the end of the day, it's just I like to think of it as just a fun comic book series. It's fast moving, every story is self-contained, and as you might have seen, I vary the tone a little with each story. I mean, it's primarily kind of a fast-moving action adventure strip, but it's more lighthearted. It's rarely gritty unless I'm doing a story that's gritty, but I've done sports stories. I've done um
You've done a
uh
romance.
I did a romance book, yeah, and I did, like I said, the sports story. I've done a drawing room murder mystery, so I try to mix it up. And part of the reason is I don't, it takes me a while to produce an issue, so I didn't want to keep readers hanging, but I also don't didn't want to be working on a story forever. I just want to kind of do my story and get out, and then work on the next one.
Not to give any giveaways, but who would have expected the mascot to be the villain of
Right.
the
Yeah, so just to give a little background for the series itself, his name is Rob Haynes. Obviously, it's he's a private detective for a company called Justice International, which is a worldwide detective agency. When I first created it, I always thought, that's kind of fanciful, But in the modern day, I did find out there are
there are
agencies
such
that do that. I mean, there's the Kroll agency, and they do corporate stuff, but they also do security. And I could also tie it in. I did a story where it kind of ties in with I don't think they're around anymore, but especially during the Iraq War, there were a lot of like mercenary agencies,
Mhm.
so mercenary companies. So I could leverage that a little in terms of they're borderline doing mercenary stuff, but they do work for private businesses. They do work for the U.S. government. They're like private contractors. But at the end of the day, it's just a way for me to put Rob in different scenarios, different adventures, and take him around the world.
Right. Yeah. And Rick Hoberg and I had the same sort of idea with Eternity Smith, right?
Right,
His daughter was a secret agent,
right,
and with her own crew. And that would have given us an excuse to put them anywhere. So,
right, right,
in a world where globalization has happened, that
right,
kind of international detective agency was inevitable. And,
right.
um, you know,
Right. And another little piece just to add is that, Rob, I also kind of set up Rob where he's kind of the new kid in the agency, and all the other detectives, they're like old school military types, or the hard-boiled guys you see used to see. So he's kind of a new approach. He's not jingoistic, he's a little more conscious about justice and things like that.
that's a very old, very true theme.
Right.
You may not be aware that the Dick Van Dyke Show was originally based on that kind of concept.
Right, right.
You are aware of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rob was the new guy coming in with Buddy and Sally, who were the old school comedian
Right, right,
writers. Um, but they didn't dwell on that at all. I mean,
right,
it wasn't even referred to after the first couple of episodes.
right, right.
But for the benefit, again, of those who are not familiar with it, how did the fanzine iteration of Rob Haynes come about?
Right. When I finished college, got serious about doing a comics, doing something with it because I just wanted to do this strip, this series in that genre. And this was in the 80s, and it was kind of the beginning of the black and white boom. And I should say my timing's always been bad. I'm always kind of on the tail end of things. So anyway, I started drawing it, and I had my first few stories. They weren't very good because I was developing. Like a lot of people, my first stories were not were me still developing. But anyway, I just started showing them around, and I actually got some. I did get some interest. I mean, one person who really picked up on it, and I'm blanking on the company's name, but it was Denny Lubert,
Renegade
who,
Press.
yeah, Renegade. Renegade picked it up, and they actually even uh they offered it for distribution, but then the company went under right at that time. So and then someone worked with me, and I did a one-off that's still out there called Rob Haynes, and I did that, and it came out. It was distributed through Diamond, but it didn't really do anything. And then right around that time, I discovered the small press. People doing it as zines, and it's kind of still around, but because of print on demand and the way distribution works for now, the lines kind of blurred a little. But back then, the small press was kind of a self-contained community. They were just people mailing things to each other, and there were the little groups that they just did their own zines and just shared it with each other or sold it. So I started doing my work in that way. I started doing it as a zine. And it was great because it gave me time to develop and then share it with people. And what I usually would say at the time, at least, because now there's so much content, but at the time I said it was kind of easy to become a big fish in a little pond because my stuff, especially as I got a little better, was pretty slick, I think, for the
Yes.
time.
Hmm.
So I was getting a lot of great attention, and I was actually also sending it to publishers, and it was really just a calling card. And again, I this is just me. I've really been just focused on this rather than quote getting work. So I got a lot of nice comments back, and then what also started is when I would go to comic book shows and people would either come up to me and recognize my name, or people would tell me, "Oh, I saw this in my friend's studio." So I was actually getting a lot of nice feedback from professionals, let alone I was getting some fans. But that was really nice that a lot of professionals were liking the book. And then around that time, that's when the self-publishing boom started, or maybe, like I said, I'm always behind. It was already starting, and that's when I transitioned into doing Adventure Strip Digest as a series, a comic book series. I did 4 issues, and those went through Diamond. And I should also add, at that time, I got a. Do you remember the Zarek Foundation for
I do
small?
not.
Oh, you don't know it? The
No.
Zarek Foundation was. I hope I have the right person. It was one of the guys who started uh Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He
Ah,
started a foundation to give grants to self-publishers.
hmm.
And I was about I mean, it's no longer around, but they went for several years where every maybe 6 months or maybe every quarter they had a class of about 5 people, and I received one of their grants, and that enabled me to actually publish this, which was, and this is a collection of all those zine stories.
Yes. I
And
was
what
going to ask
happened?
you about that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was really nice to collect it here because in the current series, my work had improved to such an extent. I didn't really want to put this old material in there. So it was nice to have a place where people could get these. People do I don't really push this book that much, but when people really like the series and they really want to see a lot of the backstory, that people do get this partly because a lot of the recurring characters are first seen in that volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did do one new story up front, so that way people would get up front my new art. I did, but anyway, so actually, and then so I did Adventure Strip Digest, and then I kind of regrouped. I took a few years off, and then that's when I rebooted it into Rob Haynes Adventures, and that's what I've been doing since. That started in 2000, and I've been doing it every year, pretty much averaging an issue a year.
And those adventure strip digest uh, stories are available in their own book.
Yeah, all I have print on demand enables me to keep them all in print, but I also have started collecting them in trade paperback. So I have this is the first 4 issues, and then 5 through 8. And I
Hmm.
have a volume 0 that collects the Adventure Strip Digest thing. So those single issues of Adventure Strip Digest, I still have them on hand, but I don't offer them. I just gave them in the trade paperback, which also allowed me to re-letter them because I lettered them, and by then digital lettering was more of a thing. So I was able to at least improve the book a little when I put it in trade paperback.
I've done a little bit of that. There was a
Yeah.
story in League of Champions #3. I wasn't happy with the coloring, so we recolored the whole thing before we
Oh yeah.
reprinted it.
What
Um,
was funny, the person who relettered it, and he'd done some professional lettering and he did a really nice job. But when I got the work back, and this is, he had to do what he had to do, I had to digitally fix the art because since the balloon placements were different or didn't match, I had a lot, I had a lot of zipatone or different
ooh,
yeah. So, thank God, it's pretty labor intensive, but all I had to do was kind of cut and paste patches that match because, when you lay Zipatone manually, the angles are different. But usually I could get a patch from the same, little Zipatone page, get and then put it, and it worked actually. It was like I said, it was labor intensive, but it
Oh,
worked. So thank
definitely labor
goodness.
intensive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was, and believe me, I'm a lazy person, but I got it done. So I'm so happy I did because now it's like I said, it's collected in trade paperback.
Okay, you are currently working on issue 26,
That's
I
right.
believe, right?
That's right.
Um, issue 1 through 24 were, comic book stories. Let's run through them quickly. You've done a lot of different genres. If you can remember, let's tell people what they can look for because I'm hoping this will bring some new fans,
Sure.
to you.
Sure. Boy, there's so much because, like I said, every story stand alone. But like I said, there are globe-trotting adventure stories, there are mysteries, there are spy stories. Um, what I often say when people come to shows, I often push issues 9 through 12. And the reason I do that is I tell them and I'll mention them here, is because they're first, I kind of feel like the series hit its stride,
Well, you
but
think those
also,
were your best issues.
yeah, or at least that's when I really hit what I wanted to do, when I really kind of felt like I reached what I was trying to do with the series. But those four issues also have a really good mix of storylines in there. I go back to other stories, I said, oh, this is good. I sometimes think give short shrift, but like I said, if people want to just kind of try things out. I want to put my what I think is my best foot forward, and I recommend issues 9 through 12 again because of the mixture of stories. Like I showed these covers, like issue 9. I mean, we were just talking about what is it? We were talking about mercenary agencies, and here this was again during the Iraq War, I think, or around that time. And in this issue, he goes to the Middle East and to help rescue a downed American pilot, and he works with a mercenary agency. So of course, part of the story is him not getting along with the mercenary agency, and he doesn't have a military background. And I like to think there's a little twist. I also mentioned that this issue was also inspired by Black Hawk Down. That's
Mhm.
sometimes a little bite, and it was. I mean, because the big rescue operation was inspired by that. And then in issue 10, this was a baseball story,
Okay.
which I like doing.
With the evil
And
mascot.
yes, that's right, that's right. And this was so fun to do because one, as a matter of fact, Tony Isabella, he had that book, 1,000 Comics You Must Read. He actually included this issue in there, but it was just fun to do, a sports story, to come up with a baseball game that kind of counted, but also tied in with the adventure. If I could
Uh-huh.
show that, I'd be, and I also studied, old baseball strips. I looked at that. There was like, oh, I can't remember, but there was an old baseball comic strip. Will Eisner did a bunch of baseball strips, so I was kind of looking at those for inspiration. And then issue 11 was he gets captured in North Korea and he has to escape and he does meet I never name the country, I never name the, for lack of, well, dictator, but they're in there.
Uh,
And if I could say, you know when I talk about tying in with real world events, I mean, part of the inspiration for that story is that I can't remember the year, but maybe it was the 90s. I don't think it was in the 2000s, but an American POW, or an American who had been missing in action in Korea, showed up in North Korea. He
hmm.
had basically defected and married a Japanese woman who had actually been, I think, kidnapped by North Korea. And he kind of returned home after that. So that's what inspired that. So there's a little bit of there. It's not really the point of the story, but it's something I put in that helped the story. And then what was issue 12? I'm blanking on issue 12. But anyway, that's an example of the kind of different
Right.
stories. And then we could jump to, if you want, issue 25, but
Issue 25 struck me as a bit different.
yes.
And I'd like you, if you would, because you used a very different approach for issue
Right.
number 25 than you'd done in any of the other books.
Yeah. Well, since it was issue 25, I wanted to do something special. So what I did was, I told you that the strip was inspired by the old adventure comics of the primarily the 30s and the 40s and into the 50s, and so I'm talking Terry and the Pirates, Buzz Sawyer and Captain Easy. I actually kind of a cheat, but I also referenced Bravo for Adventure, which
Ooh.
is by Alex Toth. But
You
but
can't
that
ignore the Phantom. You can't ignore
right.
Mandrake.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do superheroes. I was doing the, kind of those Soldiers of Fortune strip. So
Hmm.
what I did is I found a way to send Rob back in time and uh team up with all those characters. Now, having said that, of course, I changed the names of the characters, but it's pretty obvious both from the character design and the names who they are. And then the other little thing I did to connect it to those old strips is that I created it so that every page looks like a Sunday page.
Yeah, that was what
So,
struck me about the book. I
yeah.
was looking through it and said, okay, I see what he's doing here, but why? Right?
Yes, and that was the reason why I wanted to do. Again, it was connected to those old comic strips, so I wanted to make every page look like a Sunday strip. And I should point out a few things on it. And I apologize. Let me get the issue right now. Can I
Go
do
ahead.
that? I
Yeah,
didn't put it here.
step away.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
What is
sorry
that
about that.
behind you on your drawing board that we could not see until you moved away?
Yeah, I partly put that there just for this is a story I abandoned, but I hope to get back to it. It involves car racing.
Ah,
I've always wanted to do a car, even though I hate drawing cars like a lot of cartoonists. I wanted to do a story with car racing because I like it. I mean, Alex Toth is a good example. I'm impressed by comics that can capture speed and car racing on paper, and that's what I want to do the story. It's not the whole story, but I have a car chase at the end involving Formula One.
ooh,
So
okay.
that's the story. So anyway, here's the issue. And like I said, the every page is a Sunday page.
Yes,
And then I should point out a couple of things. One is this was an old logo from an old style logo that's different than the current logo.
yeah.
This was created by Kurt Busiek.
Kurt, oh,
Yeah, he was a big fan. He was a fan of my book when I was doing it as a zine. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of, I didn't have access to Photoshop or any stuff. So I used kind of like just computer fonts for my zine. And he said, "Oh, I love your book, but I hate your," he's joking, but I hate your logo. And he sent this to me. He sent me an adventure strip digest, and then he had a starring Rob Haynes logo, and that's what that is. So I used that briefly and then I modernized it, but it was a perfect example. So one thing I want to point out is that in my strip or in this issue, I'm sorry, it's flipped, but
you're
um
using the more current logo.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the first strip that takes place in the modern day, but when it goes back in time, I go to the
The
old
other logo.
logo. Yeah, and then so at the end of the story, when it kind of he returns, and it's all explained. There is kind of a explanation for all this. It returns to the modern logo on the last page.
You engaged in meta lettering.
Yeah, so that was fun to do, and it was great having that logo on hand because I said, "Oh, I could use this now." It's a perfect time to use it. And if you've seen the Terry and the Pirates logo, that logo is kind of
It's
inspired
reminiscent.
by that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean the current logo still kind of carries that over, especially the Adventures font is still the same. But anyway, it was fun to do this strip because it took the character back in time. The other thing I should add is that when I started reading comics, I also loved Sergeant Rock. And when I was in middle school, I created my own Sergeant Rock character, and this is where this name comes from, called Sergeant. It was Sergeant Haynes and Hell Platoon. Well, this strip, I actually have two issues before, a few issues before I introduced the character, but it enabled me to also throw in my old World War II character in there. So that's who that is.
Ah,
And the thing is, my character, like Sergeant Rock, was a World War II character, but since my story took place in China right before the war, after they'd already been occupied, but before the U.S. entered the war. So it was kind of fun to do a pre-war, version of the character. That's why he has the old scout hat and things like
Hmm.
that.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Um, Taking a step back just a second, those issues 9 through 12 were presumably collected in a volume since you're doing four at a time.
that's right. As a matter of fact, I only have up to eight, but I'm just about done in putting volume three together that'll
Ah,
collect those four
so
issues.
that is forthcoming.
That's forthcoming. And I should add on my website, those four issues, I offer my comics in four issue packs for only $12.
Oh,
So for what it's worth, yeah.
all righty. What is this website that people can go to?
Yes. To check out my work, they can go to wcgcomics.com. And again, that's my website, and that's where you can purchase all back issues. And there's also a link there on that page for all my social media because I'm all out on social media. I'm also available on digitally on Global Comics and indieplanet.com.
I take it that Indie Planet, the parent company, Kablam, does your printing.
That's right. As a matter of fact, Barry and I go way back. So,
Yeah,
so yeah,
they're very good. They've
yeah,
done
they,
our printing now for a long time. You know,
yeah. No, he does a great job, and yeah, but I've known Barry. We first met when we did him and his, Jenny Gregory, his wife. We did a
mhm.
signing together. We were invited to do a signing in Canada, and Jenny and Barry went, and me and my now wife went, and that's how we became friends, being in Canada get together.
Okay, stranger things have happened.
Yeah,
Okay, WCG Comics
comics.
is War Comics Group.
That's right. But I mean, that's not what it is now. But I told you when I was a kid, I was all about Sergeant Rock and doing my
Mhm.
own. I did my own comic book. Again, this is way before photocopier machines. So I was doing my comic strip on lined yellow notebook paper and then passing it around to my friends. But yeah, it was called WCG, was the War Comics Group. So that's where that name comes from. Although today I don't, I just say it's WCG.
Yeah, I know all about doing stuff on school paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got in my stash over there all of the old Major Bizonk comic books that I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah, written and drawn. I'm going to have to publish those someday, just for
Yeah.
historical
Oh, I
paperwork.
have, yeah, I have stuff that I drew that I've drawn that I will, you hate to say never, but say never, but people will never see them. I've done I've done my own with my character. I've done strips with Star Wars, and then I did these faux covers, a whole series of covers with like the Beatles, the Blues Brothers. There was no story involved. It was just a cover. Alien. It was kind of goofing around, but they're full color and with felt markers. Again, they're that I would they're so they're very crude. And I should add, especially when I said I did some comics and with some of these characters, they're straight comedies. I mean, none of them are straight adventure stories. They're actually just goofy comedy stories. So it's kind of funny that I did do some comics with Rob early on that were just comedy.
Come to think of it, I actually did publish 3 pages of that old stuff. I don't know if you've been reading Flair at all, but
Mm.
part of the backstory is that when she and her sister were kids, they used to draw and write stories about a stupid little stick boy named Dolph for each other, right? And I pulled out, 3 pages of material from that and said this was a story that was drawn by Flair when she was a little girl. So some of that
That's
has in
funny.
fact been printed. But let's very quickly, we're getting close to our standard half-hour mark here. Let's talk about issue 26, what people can expect to see, what's coming from Randy Reynaldo with Rob Haynes Adventures number 26.
Yeah, this actually ties in with what I said earlier. I like to tie in with kind of what's happening in the real world, and the short answer is Rob goes to space,
Ooh,
and
in the
yeah,
footsteps of the spirit.
that's right, that's right. As a matter of fact, I'm using that as kind of reference inspiration. I mean, there's not really a lot. quote in there. But yeah, I've been keeping some books like that on the side to look at while I work on the book. But I've you know, I I know today Moonraker isn't looked at fondly, but I always remember the space battle in Moonraker, the James Bond film. To me, I was like, oh, that is so cool. And and then and of course there's Star Wars and things. But the bottom line is when I said it ties in with real world events, is the story is basically crypto meets the billionaire space race. That's really what it is. So I said, oh, okay, this, like I said, I always wanted to kind of do a space story, but I said, oh, that's too, that's too unbelievable. But yeah, with people like Bezos and Virgin going to space, I said, oh, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to put Rob in space, and that's what he does. He's hired to go to a space resort under construction by a bunch of billionaires and one of them is a crypto person, so that kind of ties in with the story too. Now I've cheated a little because right now when you're in space there's not people are floating around, but I created I don't go into it, but he can walk around in the space resort. There's an artificial gravity. I don't
Artificial
go into the
gravity.
Yeah, I don't go to the science of it. I just say that's what it is.
Mhm.
But still it's kind of, it's a nice little different thing to do. So I'm really excited about it. And as a matter of fact, I'm now excited about my next story after that I started thinking about. So, because I'm always thinking, oh, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
That's
Well, you've got
Yeah.
plenty of time to think about it if you're doing
Yeah,
it
that's
one book a
true.
year.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
all righty. Um, Social media, people can follow you there in addition to the website.
Yes, I'm at, my handles are all slightly different, so I don't necessarily want to give them out and be wrong. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Blue Sky.
I'm sure if people look for Randy Reynaldo,
That's right.
they'll find it. Yeah,
Right.
so we
Yeah.
don't need to.
Yeah. Fortunately, there aren't a lot of Ronaldos around. I mean, there's some, but yeah, if you Google like Randy Ronaldo, Twitter or Blue Sky, whatever, it should come up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Randy, I want to thank you for being our guest today. I'm looking forward to as many more issues of Rob Haynes' adventures as you can churn out in the next 120 years or so.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
thank you. I want to encourage people to visit the WCG
Gee.
Comics website, see what's coming up, and you'll be posting updates, I expect, as issue 26 moves along.
Right. I already have. When real quick, when I mentioned, I'm looking at books that inspire me. I mean, I've recently posted some images that are kind of homages to the Tintin Goes to the
Oh,
Moon stories. Yeah. So if you
yeah.
go there, you'll see some of those images that inspired me there. So
Okay, that's great. I want to encourage people to like this, to subscribe. We need as many subscribers as we can get. And by all means, share this. Um, I need to get Kurt Busiek on for an interview at some point. So
yeah,
thank you for bringing that up. Sorry.
yeah, sure.
Randy, again, thank you and have a pleasant weekend.
You
Thank you.
too. Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.